Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, DRK, the review, back again with another video. Sony just unveiled a new title for Venom 3, and it's finally called Venom: The Last Dance. There's a lot I gotta get into with that title. Not only that, but also, what is the plan here, Sony? Because everything that we knew was gonna happen with their Sony universe ends this year for some reason, and I feel like there's a lot of impact that's gonna go into it. First, I want to get into the title, Venom: The Last Dance. The Last Dance could be a lot of things. There's not a comic book in mind that reminds me of The Last Dance or the title in case, but there's a lot what this could mean. One more final villain, which in movie universe it could say could be Toxin, because if you remember at the end of Venom 2, that the symbiote actually got into the cop. I can't remember who played the cop, but actually got into his head. You can see his eyes flash white in the church, and it was like, okay, so Toxin is gonna be the villain for the next one. And another thing this could mean is that are we actually going to get that Venom versus Spider-Man movie? Because three movies leading into it, and also post-credit scene and the post-credit scene for No Way Home actually showed Venom actually getting in contact with Spider-Man. But also at the end of No Way Home, Venom gets sent back into his universe, and a little piece of the symbiote is still in the MCU, but we already know that we're not going to be dealing with the MCU version of that symbiote. So yeah, it could go either one of two ways. We're gonna either be fighting Toxin, or we're gonna either be fighting Spider-Man. If I'm being honest with you, Venom 3, it's been on my mind, but it hasn't been on my mind as much lately because we've had the whole Sony spin-off universe character movies. We already had Morbius. We knew how that turned out. We had Madam Web, which people definitely didn't like. We have Craven the Hunter coming out later this year, which I bet you forgot Craven the Hunter was coming out. But the way I'm seeing all these Sony movies come together, I feel like at this point everybody's smart enough not to fall for this bullshit anymore, because say what you will about the first Venom movie, it made a lot of money. I didn't like it as much, but I like the second one better than the first one. Now we actually have a whole character introduction to Carnage, and we actually get to see both those symbiotes fight. But the best part about Venom itself is actually Spider-Man, and it's the whole problem with this whole universe. Sony has this whole thing with Spider-Man where they can use him, but they literally can't use him because now that the MCU has a hold of him, for right now at least, they can actually use him for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But without the Sony characters, it feels like we're actually using associated characters and making them their own movies, like as if they were heroes. Because if I can't lie and say Venom is not an anti-hero per se. He's a villain first, but an anti-hero based off what later development showed up in the comics in the 90s. But I feel like now that we're actually ending it off here, because I know Venom was intended to be a trilogy of some sorts, and Tom Hardy did kind of say this is my last one, so I feel like we're gonna end this whole thing here. But there's a lot of things The Last Dance could mean, and a lot of things it can actually do if we actually want this to be a fulfilling trilogy. One thing I can say is that all these Sony movies, as connected as they want it to be, Morbius I feel like is the most connected since they actually refer to Venom as Venom. But Madam Web itself, they already try to back out of that one. They already said, "Oh, this is in the Spider-Man universe, but this is in another universe. So we're not actually dealing with Venom, and we don't have actually have a Spider-Man that's going to be in the future by that point." Craven the Hunter, I don't even know at this point. They reference spiders in one scene, but I don't even know if it's in the same world as Venom and Morbius. I could per se, but the way they actually had that one planned out, I'm like, hopefully this movie ends up being enjoyable, because there's a lot of things you could actually try and do, because we already have Craven, the Chameleon, and now Rhino in that movie. But there's nothing I could say that could be, oh, I'm interested enough to go see it, because it's just those three side characters, but they're not actually characters, and they don't have purpose with their opposite hero. Madam Web, as bad as that movie was, it was trying to at least set up a Spider-Man within their universe, because it was set in 2003, and Sony didn't, through a lot of changes, I could just say, they backpedaled their own movie in this case, where setting in 2003 would mean years later, around 2018 or 2022, depending on where Venom is going to take place. That would be their version of Spider-Man. Their Spider-Man would be old enough to be at least 18 or 20, so like that he can be the Spider-Man of their universe. But no, Sony wanted to back out and said, you know what, no Spider-Man connections whatsoever, because we don't even know who is our Spider-Man. And I'm thinking, it's Peter Parker, obviously, since you set it up here. And there's no reason you would add Ben and Mary Parker in this story if it wasn't going to mean it was going to lead up to a Spider-Man. I heard them say that we're going to do a Miles Morales live action movie set in this Sonyverse, but I really don't want that to happen. I know they said it's going to happen, but I feel like it would have been best to not announce a Miles Morales movie after the Spider-Man Spider-Verse trilogy, because I feel like if you once you end that story, you could actually bring in Miles to live action, since a lot of people recognize him at this point. We already know he exists as a Spider-Man, so it would be more fulfilling if you actually included him into the MCU rather than have him in a separate universe, because if I'm gonna be honest, and I mentioned this to a couple friends, and they actually had some good points with it too, that if you introduce Miles into the Sonyverse as that Spider-Man, you're basically just race swapping Peter Parker, not using any of the facts that makes Miles an interesting character. And without a Spider-Man, there can't be a Spider-Man Miles Morales without the actual Spider-Man that he's inspired by. All I can say is this: Venom is their most successful character and has made it to a trilogy this far. All the other characters, we don't care about them as much because they're not actual Spider-Man characters that the fans and that the audience are more interested in. You see Venom, you see Spider-Man. The only thing missing was the white spider logo, and I feel like we're not gonna get that until the last 10 minutes of the movie. The same way Madam Web teased us with all those suits at the very end. What I hope is this: all I want is a good Venom movie. At least try and end this whole Sony verse because if I'm being honest, there's no movies right after this. After Venom 3, that's it. I know they scheduled El Muerto, but there's no way that's happening, especially since Bad Bunny dropped out and they kind of canned the movie in this case. The only other thing is the Spider Verse, Beyond the Spider Verse, and I feel like now this whole live action thing it has to end here. Sony, we're done with it. Unless you're gonna do a Spider-Man 4 or an Amazing Spider-Man 3, that's when the fans are actually gonna show up to see your movies. None of this spin-off bullshit knowing it's not gonna lead into anything without an actual Spider-Man to actually fight these villains. That's my rant for today. All I gotta just say is this. Hopefully Sony can get it back together. If Marvel has a chance to do something with these characters, let them do it. Because originally, fun fact, No Way Home was gonna have Kraven the Hunter as the actual villain, and he was gonna track down Spider-Man, so we would have actually gotten a little version of Spider-Man 2 into No Way Home, but history said and done, and I'm kind of thankful we actually got the crossover trilogy from all different Spider-Men. Alright, you guys, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Do you like Venom 3? If not, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.